after Isaac finished blessing him, Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, and Esau comes in from hunting. Whoops. And so in verse 32, Isaac says, who are you? And he says, I'm your son, your firstborn son, Esau. And Isaac trembled violently, it says in verse 33. Who was it then that hunted game and brought this to me? I just blessed them. Indeed, I blessed them, and they will be blessed. Now there's a piece of me that goes, why couldn't you just reverse a blessing? Esau has the same thing. When Esau heard his father's words, a loud and bitter cry came out of him, and he said, bless me too, my father. But Isaac said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? It was a trick. He's really Jacob and I'm Esau, so the blessing you gave was to Esau. I'm Esau. And he said, this is the second time he's taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's trying to take my blessing. He's taken my blessing. Haven't you anything in reserve for me, a blessing for me? And Esau says, look, I've made him lord of you. I made his relatives his servants. I've sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? And he says, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too. And he wept out loud, and his father Isaac answered him, this is the blessing Isaac gave him. Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness and away from the dew of the heavens. Do you know what that means? That means that because the dew of the heavens, there's not going to be any rain. In other words, the crops and the richness of the earth, you won't yield anything. And he says, you will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. And when you grow restless, you will. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke off your neck. So basically he's sustaining exactly what would have happened, what we know about Esau, what we know about the line of Ishmael, is that it would be a violent nation. It would be a nation that the way that they gain is by conquering, by war. And you will live by the sword, and all the nations will hate you. And your brother's going to be greater. Y'all, do you see that the son of Isaac, the son of Ishmael, all this coming down comes down to the people today between the Jewish and Christian people and the Islamic people. It's the story that people today don't know. They don't know. They don't understand all that's happening over there. They don't understand the nature of the different peoples and what was promised and what will come to pass. And this is where it all comes from. This is not to make you hate a Muslim person. Don't ever hate another human being. All mankind is made in God's image. There's no room for hate of any kind. We can hate sin. We can never hate the sinner. And we should always love our enemies and pray for our persecutors. So just remember, that's what Jesus says. So, but you still need to know the truth, and you need to know the story and see how God will accomplish his purpose anyway. No matter what anybody does, God has a plan, and his plan can be joined in by us at any time we choose to walk away from being our own God and having our own rebellious ways, and instead submitting to God and his plan and his grace and serving him and glorifying him. And then you will be in God's plan, and it'll be wonderful no matter what happens. But things are gonna still happen. So, in verse 41, Esau held a grudge against Jacob. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother, Jacob. In other words, Dad's fixing to die, and that's when I'm going to kill my brother, and I'm going to get this taken care of. When Rebekah was told what her older son Esau said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while. I'll send word for you to come back when all this calms down. And in verse 46, Rebekah says to Isaac, I'm disgusted with living. She's suicidal because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living. So here's interesting. First of all, it said when Esau was having all these feelings, he thought it to himself. And yet we see Rebecca was told by someone what he was up to. So that's interesting to me. And that she was very clever, this Rebecca, beautiful and clever. Because now she goes to Isaac and says, I'm going to commit suicide if Jacob also gets married to these people out of the bloodline. Because we already have that with Esau now, where it's going to happen to Jacob too. Send him away, get him to, did she say that? No, she didn't say send him away. She just says, my life won't be worth living if he does that. If Esau has done it, and he has so disappointed us, to have Jacob do the same thing. And so Isaac calls for Jacob and blessed him and said, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Remember all these names that we've just talked about? That's why I said don't ever skip over the names, because later on you'll go, oh yeah, I remember talking about that. Take a wife for yourself among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. In other words, your uncles. Take one of your cousins. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you've become a community of peoples. May He bless you and give you descendants, the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner. Okay, so that just goes on. And then it says, now Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him to Paddan Aram and to take a wife from there. And that he was blessed and he was commanded not to marry a Canaanite woman. And Jacob had obeyed his father. Just like Isaac had obeyed his father, Jacob is obeying his father. There is obedience here. And Esau, who was disobedient and married the wrong bloodline, when he found out that the one thing that would really upset his dad was this marrying into the Canaanite women, the Hittites, and he realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac. So he went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth and daughter of Ishmael's son Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. In other words, so not only did he already have women that were his wives that were not of the proper bloodline, when he realized just how bad that bothered his dad, in other words, that that was something that he could revenge or avenge. I don't know if it would be truly avenging, but in retaliation, in revenge, that if he went and married another one, that would really get him. Then he went and did it. So Jacob left Beersheba. He reached a certain place, stopped for the night. Taking one of the stones, he laid it under his head like a pillow, and he, in a dream, saw a staircase resting on the earth, and its top was reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it, and there above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, the God of Isaac, and I will give to your descendants the land on which you're lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. They will spread out from the east to the west, the north to the south. All the people of the earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I will go with you, and I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. So Jacob wakes from his sleep, and he says, surely the Lord is in this place. I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And early in the morning, he took the stone that he'd placed under his head like a pillow, and he used it as a pillar and poured oil on top of it and called the place Bethel. And though the city used to be called Luz. And he made a vow, if God will be with me and will watch over me in this journey I'm taking and give me food to eat and clothes to wear so that I can return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And I will give all and all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. So he's making a vow to God. But Jacob's vow, just like Abraham, Jacob responded to God's presence with obedience, and Bethel literally is translated as house of God. And it was that the place was the Luz place. The name of it was also the geographic location or the general district where that would be found. So it's giving you details of truth, of geographic truth and evidence of what was actually happening, that this is a real place, but this is a real promise, and that this dream would come true one day. Well, you know what's interesting? If you switch over, hold your place in your Bible and switch over to John 1:51. I'll write that down in your notebook and make that one of your red flags to go look at that later. But I'll tell you what it says. John 1, chapter 1, verse 51. This is when Jesus is calling Philip and Nathanael, and he says that he saw them under a fig tree, and he was nowhere near them, and so they knew that that was a miracle. And they're like, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, and you are the King of Israel, because you said you saw us under the fig tree. You know, you were nowhere near us. How could you do that? And Jesus says, you believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You will see greater things than that. Here's the thing. Very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. This is Jesus. It's acknowledgement that he is the Son of God, that we're seeing back here where God is setting up his ancestry that he will descend from, is back here in this dream. Isn't that interesting? I mean, who could write this? It's just amazing. I mean, it's one of those things to me that increases my faith. Okay, so now, oh, and by the way, he gives a tenth of all that he has to God out of this, which that